And we're back, and with me in the studio is Bob Eggleton. Bob, welcome to Fast Forward.
Thank you.
Now, you're an artist, and
Yes.
I'm glad we've got an artist on. You have won like all the different awards you can win almost, and most people that are fans know your work. How did you get started? What got you into being an artist in science fiction and fantasy?
Well, how far do I go back? I can go back till I was 4 years old. It was the Sinclair dinosaurs at the New York World's Fair, and of course I got into that. I liked comic books, Godzilla, Star Trek, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I liked drawing things. And the idea was to get into comic books. I was originally going to be a comic book artist. I said, I want to do comic books because for some reason I thought that was a glamorous lifestyle. And as I moved along, I started realizing it wasn't really as glamorous as I thought. And so I went into looking at wanting to paint pictures. And I contacted some artists, and they said I'd met a few artists, one of whom was Eric Ladd at the time. He was receiving a lot of attention for his work. And he said, you know, you should paint book covers. This is in the late 70s. And so I went to a convention called BossCon, and my first one in 1979. And I saw all these great paintings by all these great artists. And I said, you know, that's what I want to do.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, 18.
18.
Yeah.
And that's when you knew this is what I wanted to do.
That's what I knew. That's what was going to be it, you know. But so I just felt art. I kept coming back to art anyway because I was always like looking at great art. And I mean, I was raised on famous monsters of filmland, and I was raised on comics and all kinds of things like that, and movies and books and everything. I just loved it. And I went to museums too. I looked at great classical paintings. So my whole life kind of had this art kind of side to it, you know, which was great.
Now, in terms of these artists that you would look at, which artists really had the most influence on what you do?
Oh, in terms of what, the classical?
Yeah, the classical to begin with.
Oh, when I started, I think I remember Frederick Edwin Church's work. He's did the Hudson Valley River paintings, and Thomas Moran and Thomas Cole and people like that. And I was so inspired by these epics, you know, these big epics, you know. And I said, you know, and it's like John Martin who paints these incredible epics of the end, like up the apocalypse, and I was like, that's what I want to paint, you know, except that I'm putting, you know, more of a science fictional bent to them in some places. And that was really what I set out to do, is be a really good painter. I wanted to understand paint and really understand paint, but in the postmodern, the sort of the post-60s, late 70s sort of thing, the focus in the colleges was not realistic art. It was this modern, you know, stuff, and that non-representational, they called it. And I was told, you know, oh, well, that's what you got to do. That's what art is all about. And I said, no, that's not what I want to do. So I went off and did what I wanted to do. And
so you did some training.
I did some training,
but then it was like, that's not for me.
Exactly, ultimately. And I started showing my work in science fiction convention art shows, and that's really where it kind of started gelling together, and my life really came together, and every aspect of my life has come out of that.
Well, for those people in the audience that may not know what a science fiction art show is like, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Basically, at the convention, there's an art show,
Yes.
and artists of all kinds, all skill
levels. They put
levels.
up all their work, and they put bid sheets on them, and people buy them, or they don't buy them, and they just come along and they tell you they like them, or they tell you they don't like them. And anyway, it gets you a lot of exposure to people in a way that it's almost, and I'll say this guardedly, it's almost very artificial in the sense of you're in this enclosed environment, and it's a fan collective all its own. So you become very well known within that fan collective, but it's not the real art world. As we know it, it's not the real art world. But you know, so what? You get a few awards in these art shows, and you start feeling pretty good about your work.
Yeah, and also particularly in the days when you were doing it, a lot of art directors from publishers and people like that were going to the art shows at the conventions to look for new artists.
That's when they looked at new artists, and publishers did things the old-fashioned. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have all these, like, you know, virtual things where something, Facebook and everything that's going on now. You didn't have any of that social interaction that was like an online community. Nobody knew what that was about. That was science fiction, you know. And we had to be face to face. We had to do things through the mail and over the phone, and oh boy, oh God forbid, you do things on the phone.
Yeah,
you know?
actually,
you call someone. You know,
actually talk to people.
Yes.
Ooh, creepy.
Ooh. creepy.
So there you were, 18, showing your stuff at art show conventions. What was the first big break you got then?
I had had some work up, and I was selling work, which was really nice because I'd go to these things and they'd pay for themselves. Jim Bain had come up to me and he looked at my work and he sort of said, I'd like to get some new artists. So he asked me if I did covers, and the next thing I got a call from these people, and he said, why don't you do some covers for us? I was like, okay, cool. So, it was like...
So what was the first? What was the first cover you did? Do you remember?
Oh, he bought a stock art for a title. I can't even remember what it was, but it was I think it was an old Mac Reynolds book, and he just bought this, what they call stock art. And the nice part about buying stock art is they take a slide of your work, it already exists, and then they pay you money for it. So you don't do any work. You just stick it in an envelope and send it to them, and they make a book cover out of it. And then I think one of the first ones was there was so many. There was like Flight of the Dragonfly by Robert Fulward and a few other things like that. A lot of hard science. At the time I was really attracted to the hard science stuff, and I still am, but I've expanded a lot since then.
Yeah, because one of the things about your work, and particularly if you look at the whole body of your work, is you're not working in any one particular area. You do hard SF, you've got fantasy stuff of all kinds, you've got horror. I mean, your dragons are very well known, and your Cthulhu stuff and the King Kong work.
What had happened was I had determined early on, my dad gave me a piece of advice that I took to heart. He said you ought to use common sense, and he said diversify, diversify, diversify. He said always do lots of different things, and when one thing is not doing well, the other thing might be doing well. So that's how I've sort of surfed through this, and I've been at it almost 30 years, so it's not too bad, and I decided I wanted to go in these different directions. At one point I was doing so many spaceships, and they were nice and they were fun, it was great, but I was like, I want to do a dragon, and I said to these people, I said at Ace Books, I'd like to do a dragon, and they said, okay, fine, and they gave me a book to with a dragon. So, and then that started that, and then I found ways to go more mainstream with some of the work that I've done. So yeah, so and it's always a way of keeping it diversified, and it always keeps, when one aspect is down, the other aspect's up.
Yeah. Now you mentioned your father giving you advice. Were your parents, did they encourage you as an artist?
Oh yeah. My mother worried. Mothers worry. That's what they do. But largely, my dad got me drawing when I was five or six. I can't remember. It was very young, and I had a few small childhood illnesses, and I was home a lot. So he got me drawing on this chalkboard, and he showed me what perspective was, and he did a lot of architectural drawings and engineering drawings, and he wasn't a pro at it, to be sure. He was a guy that did it on Sundays, you know what I mean, but he knew what he was telling me, and he said, and so I sort of picked up on that, and my mother, she ran me around to a lot of art classes and stuff like that when I was young, and and she encouraged him. She was always, is this art still going to work out? It's like, yeah, it's going to be fine.
You're going to starve. You'll be in a garret.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
You're still doing some covers.
Yeah.
But you're also doing commission work. Are you doing things just for yourself?
I'm trying to fight to get things to do for myself. I turned 50 last year, and that was a real major point for me. I said, look, it just is a demarcation point. You start thinking, I really want to do things for me. And I've also had a lot of friends that have passed away and things like that. And these things make you realize, you say, I want to do some work that is sort of my own visions that I want to do, and that's where I want to be. And that's what I've got. I've got a million ideas. That's what scares me, is I've got so many ideas. I'll be in the middle of one big idea that I'm painting, and I'll come up with 6 other ideas that I want to do in the middle of that, because each thing triggers another idea.
And the painting, it takes you, people that aren't artists, I don't know if they understand how much work and time goes into a painting. And you don't do, a lot of your paintings are big.
Yeah, they're big now. They're getting bigger. Yeah, they're getting bigger. The bigger is more fun because you can really open up on it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the painting process.
Yeah.
Because I'm interested in that, not being an artist at all. I have no idea of what you guys do.
Okay.
You've got your idea, your commission or whatever, and what do you start with? You start with the blank canvas.
Okay. Well, you start with an idea. Everything begins with a pencil. And you come up with thumbnail ideas, very small paintings, and very small drawings, this big. And you see him working on a very basic level of black and white. And if it's an abstract design is what you're looking at. If that abstract design starts something that's working, it's going to work on a bigger scale. Now you've got to fill it out and populate it and make it more interesting. I used to work in acrylic a lot, and I used to work in airbrush a lot, and I found as I got toward the end of the 90s, I found my stuff I wasn't real happy with it, and so I broke away from it. And in the mid part of the last decade, I started working in oils, thanks largely to my wife. She was the one who she was working in oils, and she does, really great work in oils. And I'm watching her paint in oils, and I'm going, I want to paint in oils, like that. So she said, so do it, like that. So that's sort of what I did. But oils have been the latest medium of choice, and that's been great.
And when you work in oils, there's layers in your work, and things cut out or something, and how do you do that?
Basically it's just scraping it. It's happy accidents happening. It's where you're creating everything in an oil painting. The important thing with an oil painting is the underpainting. And this is what I learned from looking at great masters' work. I love my contemporaries and my peers. I love their work. But ultimately, and this is my advice to anybody getting into art, go to museums, study the work, study these incredible masters of guys that are, a few hundred years old, the 18th century, the Romantics, anybody like that. These guys really had it, and when you can look at that, it germinates things for you, and suddenly you've got your own style. You've got your you're not looking like you're copying Frazetta, or you're copying this guy, or you're copying that guy. And there's a lot of people that do that. And I understand that. The highest form of flattery is copying somebody, but I don't believe that. I think it's not highly original, and the best way to be original is to go look at these museum paintings and seeing what these guys are doing, and it's all there. It's all there.
You do have your own style. I mean, you look at something, even the drawings. I've seen some of your bigger pencil work, which is beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, it's all very loose. It's all it's all just crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I'll do anything to get to the end. The end justifies the means in everything you do. When I work on a painting, I start putting an underpainting in, and I let that underpainting show through. And then I'll take a palette knife, and a palette knife is a kind of a triangular shaped device tool you get in a paint store, and it's used for mixing paint on the palette, but what you can do with it is you can scrape paint back off of it. So you put a layer of paint on and you scrape it back off, and you get this great texture showing, and it's the texture of the canvas, and you have to let it set up overnight, get it tacky as we call it, and you start working your details in over that. So you get this great basis, and all the great painters of the Hudson Valley River, they all did this. They all did these great underpaintings to their work, and that's what I'm studying. When I've got my nose this close to one of their canvases, and the guards in the museum are all getting nervously getting this close, it's because I'm looking at their underpaintings.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And the underpainting is the basis of it all. The detail and what you see on top, that's the easy part. That is the easy part, because an oil paint, this is what the great thing about oil paint, Ken Kelly, who's a really terrific artist I admire, said this too. He said, when you start off with working with oil paint, it looks like a mess when you're starting. I get it on me, I get it all over, and it's everywhere. It's just this big mess, and you're covering up your drawing and stuff like that with all of this underpainting, or this like an ambery. I tend to use a warmer earth tones. And you're thinking, what the hell happened to my painting? And it looks like a mess. So you come back in the next day, and it's like, start picking out details, start working in, oh my God, my painting, it's coming alive. There it is, and the painting looks great. It looks like a mess for 4 days, and then the next 2 days, it looks great.
That must have been scary when you first started working in oil.
Oh, Picasso said the biggest fear in the world is the fear of a blank canvas.
When you got the paintings at the mess stage, and when you first were doing it, didn't know what was going to happen for sure.
Oh yeah, and it's like, it's due on Tuesday. It's like, oh boy, you have to. It can be nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking as hell.
But they come out beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
thanks. They really do.
And I paint on canvas too, because I love that. The other thing is too, is that lately is a lot of people in the 80s and the 90s, they were trying to cover their brush strokes up. They didn't want, and this is the digital art, which is a whole other thing I won't get into, but the digital art, you get it where the paintings everything is smooth. Okay, it's just the image, and everything is very smooth, And unfortunately for me, I like the physicality of a painting. I like to put that between you and the viewer. I like the bumps. I like the lumps of paint on it. I like people to see
And
that.
that's obvious from your work. It's a very tactile.
When you pick it up, I like you to see this is famous monster. I
want to talk about that. You did a Famous Monsters of Filmland cover just recently.
A Famous Monsters of Filmland cover. This is the magazine that my mother said to me, "You can't have that." She said to me way back. She goes, "You shouldn't have that. It's this this is the magazine everybody hid under their bed. All the kids hid under their bed." And it was run by different people, but now it's run by someone who bought the entire franchise of it, and he just called me up out of the blue, and he said, "I really want you to do covers for me because I love your work and stuff." And I said, "Oh my God, you're the Famous Monsters, blah, blah, blah." So when I saw my painting with the Famous Monsters logo, it was an epiphany. It was a religious moment for me. It was like, oh my God.
I know, with all the covers you've done of all these great books and stuff, I love the fact that the thing that you got the biggest kick out of doing was Famous Monsters of Film, and they had a little article about you.
Yeah, they have a little article. They did a little article on me and
with more paintings and things.
And then the next issue is the Godzilla issue, and they gave that to me to do.
Well, because who else are you going to give Godzilla to?
Well, it's just like it's fun, and then I get to write in that too. That's the other thing. So now I'm a writer for them. So this is really, really great. This has been great fun for me. That has been a lot of fun for me to do, and it's been a point where I did a lot of things I wanted to do dreams that I wanted to make happen, and that was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, people that follow you on Facebook, and you do a lot of posts on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Everyone knew how big a deal this was for you to have this Famous Monsters cover and have the article in it, and you were like a little kid.
Oh yeah. You're 12 years old again.
Yeah. So what's got you excited? Let me ask you one quick question. In terms of some of the newer artists that are out there working now, who do you think is the most exciting? Who are the ones that you look at and go, "Wow, that guy's amazing"?
That's
a tough one.
That's a tough one, yeah. There's some guys that do work in the film industry that I think are pretty cool. Also, there's some really good artists out there that I really pick up their work and think, Stan DeSantos, he's a good artist. Greg Manchess, another one. And he's been around a while too, but he's another one where you stop and you look at it and you say, that's painting.
And you got books out now?
Oh, I have a new book. It's my 8th or 9th. I think it's my 8th. It's I've done a series of books. This one is called Dragon's Domain, the ultimate how to paint dragons book. So everybody asking me, all these kids are asking me, they write me letters, how do you do your dragons? How do you paint dragons? Well, now I wrote a book on it, and that is, you can get it in any Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com. It's just Dragon's Domain.
Okay, and, great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Bob, we're just about out of time.
Okay.
I want to thank you for being here. And
it's been a blast.
It has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we finally got to talk about your art and everything.
Cool.
And, well, that's it for this episode of Fast Forward. So from all of us here at the studio, this is Mike Zipser saying, take care.